council already couldn't be here today. Welcome on this beautiful day. Yesterday was the longest day of the year, and I'm so happy to announce that today begins our great slide into winter. Welcome to all you guys, Utah pioneers and guests, and I'd like to introduce you to the guests that we have here today. We have invited the royalty of the days of 47 today. They're kind of incognito, so I hope you can see them. We're going to be introduced later in this meeting. I am Ellen Jepson, the president, and I'll introduce our board to you, and they need to stand as I read their names. Marianne Jensen, first vice president. Constance Huntsman, second vice president. Jeannie Bowerbank, third vice president. Julie Thompson, fourth vice president. Stacy Page, fifth vice president. Vicki Chambers, secretary and membership chair. Billy Allred, treasurer, and Harriet Rasmussen, registrar. Let's give them all a big hand. International board members, Madeline Barlow, parliamentarian, Jan Baxter, music chair, Christine Esplendosa, chair, Becky Holland, assistant photo department, Marguerite Maurer, Harvard chair, Martha Bromwell, photo chair, Isabel Stringham, satellite museum chair, and Janelle Wilson, gift counter. We also have our regional reps. I'll announce their names. All of them couldn't be here, but those who are here, please stand when I read your name. Jenny Benson from Washington, Mary Fellers, California, Thor Kreitzer, Washington, Catherine Park, Nevada, Evelyn Sharp, California, Roberta Tanner, California, Mariana Taylor, Utah, Washington County, and Lynn White, Arizona. Welcome to you and thank you. Also like to recognize Maureen Smith, one of our former presidents, who is here sitting on the stand with that. And our guest speaker, who will also be introduced later in this meeting. Thank you. It's good to be with you. It's good to have you all here. Such an exciting day for us. We'll have our thought and prayer by Stacy Page. Then our royalty will sing the national anthem. And then we'll have the vote and pledge of allegiance by Madeline Barlow. Our theme song, Utah Pioneers. And we'll go to that.
Mother Teresa said, kind words can be short and easy to speak, but their echoes are truly endless. Our dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful that we can meet together as daughters of the Utah Pioneers. We're grateful for our heritage and the opportunity that we have to learn about them. We're grateful for their example and pray that we will incorporate the things that we learn about them into our lives and share those with our children and grandchildren. We're grateful that we can be here today and pray that the Spirit will be with us, that we will be able to learn things that will help us understand the lives that we have and our heritage. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the the red lights we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket that was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
We need to cherish that we are one nation under God. Our ancestors envisioned a nation wherein liberty and justice would be for all people. As we are pledging our allegiance to the American flag, we are stating that we are one nation under God and indivisible. The flag represents all we are as a nation, and at the same time, acknowledging that we are a people under the authority of God, and that our nation and God are indivisible. Please join with me in the great privilege of pledging our allegiance to honor our flag of the United States of America.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now have the 2025 ISUP election results with Nikki Chambers and the installation of international officers by Madeline Barlow.
Good morning.
I'm Vicki Chambers, Chairman of the 2025 International Nomination and International Election Committees, working with committee members Jeannie Bellarday, Janelle Wilson, Deanne Baxter, and Marguerite Mallard. The International Election Policy and Procedures was brought to the Executive Board on January 6th, where it received an affirmative vote and ratified by the International Board that day. This policy and procedures was added to the ICP website under international information. The international elections are now based on a simple majority vote on the county level, rather than company delegates attending a voting meeting here at the international election, at our international convention meeting. On January 21, the international election ballot and international election policy and procedures were emailed to 185 company presidents. These were also posted to our ISDB website. The international elections were announced monthly beginning in the January 7th bulletin, as well as in the spring legacy. The deadline for reporting election results by company presidents was April 30th. 43 companies reported their vote tally by that deadline. The results were forwarded on May 20th to election tellers, who by profession are independent auditors. All procedures for nominating, witnessing, handling materials, communicating with company presidents, collecting and reporting results were followed. The report from the election tellers were received on June 2nd, and their report is as follows, and I quote their report. Election statement of verification. We hereby certify that the attached results for the 2025 International Officer Election of the International Society of Daughters of Utah Pioneers are a true and accurate accounting of all votes cast in the election. This certification is based on a review of the recorded election results, verified against election submissions from the various companies of Daughters of Utah Pioneers, sincerely Jason Stapley and Craig Stapley. So my report to you is that all offices on the ballot for international elected officers were filled by majority vote. And these are the offices and the nominees that were on the ballot. President Ellen Jensen. First Vice President Marianne Jensen. Second Vice President Constance Huntsman. Third Vice President Jeannie Ballard. Fourth Vice President Julie Thompson. Fifth Vice President Stacy Page. Secretary Vicki Chambers. Treasurer. I was emotional there. Treasurer Billy Allred. Registrar Harriet Rasmussen, and historian Constance Huntsman. Thank you.
In the presence of honored guests and the ISDP members here assembled, it is my privilege and honor to administer the elected officers pledge to President Ellen Jensen and her officers as they take office for 2025 to 2027. Will the elected officers of the International Board please stand in support as your president recites the oath of office? I, Madeline Barlow, a member of International Society, Daughters of Utah Pioneers, International Board, having been appointed official installation officer, and thereby having the right and privilege to install elected officers of International Society Daughters of Utah Pioneers on the International Board. I say to you, you are about to assume an important office, and I charge you to study your duties contained in the Constitution and bylaws of the society and learn from your predecessor. Will the elected officers of the International Board please listen as your president recites the pledge of office?
I, Ellen Jackson, President of the International Society of Daughters of Utah Pioneers, promise for myself and fellow officers that to the best of our ability, I will uphold the Constitution of us and promote the work of this society with love, dignity, and honor. June 21st, 2025.
Do you, elected officers of the International Board, promise to support President Ellen Johnson in this pledge? If so, please raise your right hand and say, I do.
I do.
Thank you. We'll now have our financial report by Billy Allred and then the president report. And then we'll have the outreach minute, be the nudge, and something you've all been looking forward to, a skit for the introduction of our new Tales of Triumph Volume 8.
To the members of the International Society of Daughters of Utah Pioneers, daughters, as prescribed in the Constitution and bylaws, Article 3, Section 4D, the following is the financial report to be presented to the membership body of ISDP as reviewed by the firm of Larson and Company Certified Public Accountants. Larson and Company has completed a financial compilation report with disclosures for the year ended May 31, 2024 and 2025, and has been engaged to do the same for the fiscal year 2023, and has been engaged to do the same for the fiscal year just ending on May 31. The DUP Executive Committee that oversees all financial decisions believes that all areas of income received, expenditures made, contributions received, and assets of DUP have been recorded and administered in accordance with appropriate accounting practices, policies, and procedures for the year ended May 31, 2025. Billy Allred, Treasurer. Your support of DEP through annual dues, donations, and book, pen, and other gift shop purchases is vital to our fiscal health. This income enables us to develop and print the annual lesson book, purchase office supplies and office equipment, fund the costs of website development and maintenance, pay for insurance, postage and printing, accept and process credit card transactions, cover the costs of travel to your district conventions, establish new DEP markers, and meet accounting, technical, and administrative expenses, plus pay for this annual seminar convention event. We have dozens of people who volunteer in our organization in addition to the members of the ISDP board. We do, however, have one salaried employee, our curator, plus our facilities manager and 2 secretaries who are all part-time employees. We pledge to continue to be good stewards of the money we receive from dues and from other sources, and appreciate your support of Daughters of Utah Pioneers. Thank you.
124th birthday, Daughters of Utah Pioneers. And thank you to Annie Taylor Hyde for launching this wonderful society on April 11th, 1901. Next year is our 125th birthday. We're excited for that. We have another milestone. Our Pioneer Museum on July 24th turns 75 years old this year. So please come to the museum if you can on that day and celebrate with us that wonderful milestone. And on December 16th, 2024, we meaning Harriet Rasmussen, processed member number 100,000. So we have reached that milestone. Her name is Carol Winter. She's my sister. Or touches right. I'd like to make a report of our organization to you. We had 1,047 new members of DUP in the fiscal year June 1st, 2024 to May 31st, 2025. That's about an average of 90 new members a month. So I hope you're all really enjoying the fruits of your labors in that effort. We have 185 companies, 105 of which received recognition certificates for their numbers of members of new members in the company. We have 850 camps. 7 camps are virtual camps in different time zones, including Mountain, Central, Pacific, Eastern, and Hawaii Aleutian Standard. I think we need to add the Hawaii Aleutian Standard to the district convention list. I need to visit them and see them. We have 22,288 members on camp rosters, and 14,227 members are current on their dues and are considered active. We have 1,275 members at large. 439 of those are current with their dues. 879 associates are current with their dues. We have 597 markers. These markers are physical representations and celebrations of different locations and people that are important to Daughters of Utah Pioneers. They are in 13 states and 11 countries, including Canada, Denmark, England, Germany, Holland, Ireland, Norway, Scotland, Sweden, Switzerland, and Wales. It is the special mission for our marker chairman to go and visit every one of them. And she's almost done. Isn't that awesome? Our newest marker is the Salem Bell marker, to be dedicated on September 8th in Salem, Utah. Congratulations to them. We have 126 satellite museums other than the Pioneer Memorial Museum. Volunteers for Pioneer Memorial Museum include 17 international officers, 9 regional representatives, about 60 docents, approximately 10 volunteers in the history department, photo department, and others doing special projects. We also have a small army of HDUP members, husbands of Daughters of Utah Pioneers. Many of whom you met as you came into the school this morning, and they helped you with the books. They are essential for the organization in so many ways, too numerous to count, and we are grateful for their service. We published a bulletin monthly for the past 6 years. Presidents receive the bulletin by email, and it's also available to everyone to read on the front page of our website. I present to you the president's official word of how we're doing in 2025, Daughters of Utah Pioneers. Thank you.
This year, we have challenged camps, companies, individuals to find those inactive members that are on your camp roster. Where are they? And what are their current interests in being involved in Daughters of Utah Pioneers? Remember Newton's law of motion. An object at rest remains at rest unless acted upon by an external force. And that is you. So once you have identified an inactive member, we encourage you to be the nudge. Nudge her back into activity. Nudge that daughter from her resting place by inviting her to come with you to camp meetings. We are going to give you a couple of creative ideas on being a nudge. I chose to be the fudge nudge. I will come to your door and love you and entice you back with sugar to come with me to the camp. Now, some of us are going to share other nudge ideas.
I will be the transportation nudge. I will put the top down on my Camaro convertible, come to your house and be your chauffeur to attend a meeting.
I want to go with her. Being a nudge, I am not a rookie because I always take the chocolate chip cookie.
I brought a book. I am the lesson nudge, encouraging women to come to the meetings, to listen to the lessons, and feel good about themselves.
I'm gonna be the little bit nosy nudge, and I'm gonna pay attention to who wasn't there for the last month or two. And then I'm gonna find it, and then I'm gonna call them and say, where are you and how are you? And can I pick you up?
I am a plant nudge. I'm going to give you this plant and every week that you water it, it's going to remind you of when DEP is. Even better, I will put a sticker on it to tell you the exact day and time.
May it please the daughters. Let the record reflect. Never judge. Just give a nudge.
I won't budge until you accept. Bottom line is we just miss you. We hope to see you all this fall.
The moment you've all waited
You mustn't push, you mustn't pull, the books are here, the shelves are full. So merrily on your way you'll go to learn some things you didn't know. When we set out on monument, we knew the daughters couldn't wait. So merrily on our way we went, and this is how our hero stand. We went around the state to see that ghosts exist congenially. Fresh years always brought them out to waiting settlers without fail. We met an artist new to us, the Salmon River was the fuss, the Jewish pioneers to see, and the quasi-centennial of TUP. Yes, that's an actual word. So please don't push and please don't hold, the bookshelves on and the shelves are full. So merrily to your camp you'll go to share the things you didn't know.
Wow, they should take it on the road, shouldn't they? It's my privilege to introduce the 2025 Day of 47 Royalty,
Queen Ellie Simmons is attending Brigham Young University, majoring in experience design management, minoring in Spanish and psychology. She has a deep love of music, sings, and plays her guitar, incorporating songs she writes. For much of her life, she has performed at restaurants and numerous community events. A 4-month humanitarian trip to Costa Rica gave her the opportunity to teach English to children. She also served a mission for her church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Bolivia. She is very competitive, loves to run marathons. Ellie is the daughter of Ann Simmons, South Jordan, Utah, and Curtis Simmons, Henderson, Nevada. Attendant Megan Haney. And I apologize to those of you who are Utah fans. Megan is also attending Brigham Young University. And will graduate next April with a bachelor's degree in communication disorders, after which she plans to attend graduate school to become a certified speech language pathologist. She volunteers at food pantries, tutors children, and volunteers to teach English as a second language to adults in countries all over the world. Megan is a trained classical singer, excellent pianist, and performs with the BYU Women's Choir. She is fluent in Spanish, loves to read. She is a poetess and writes poetry. And she does intriguing card tricks. Sorry, you won't get to see that talent today. Megan is also an artist and runs her own small business doing commission paintings. She served a mission for her church in California. Megan is the daughter of Paul and Nancy Haney of Perry, Utah. I apologize to all the other universities because Jacqueline has an A, recently returned from serving a mission in Canada for her church and will be attending Augusta. Major in business management, and by the way, that is not a requirement to be in the royalty, it just happened. Prior to Jacqueline's mission, she interned at a Dolphin Research Center in Florida, lived in Puerto Rico, working as a mother's helper for the family with 10 children to earn money to help fund her mission. She's a ballroom dancer, has musical theater and vocal training. Talent she used as a performing missionary in Nauvoo, where she brought pioneer stories to life. Food bank drives, Summer Santa, and singing at assisted living centers are some of the ways she serves her community. She is currently working as a vocal coach and recording engineer. Jacqueline is the daughter of Chuck and Marilyn Mazarin of Lehi, Utah. And I would like to thank these women for taking time out of their busy schedules to be with us today to share their talents. And we're going to excuse them after they sing for you and as they're getting ready to perform, to tell you just very quickly about the song. I went to a convention in Washington State. And they sang a beautiful song, and I went to person in charge and I said, that song is so beautiful, where did it come from? And she said, I wrote it. I wrote the lyrics and I wrote the music. She is a daughter of our organization. Her name is Marie Fox. She is in a one-camp company, Spokane Valley, and she has given us permission to perform her song. I think that you'll enjoy it. Thank you.
Causing all to leave comforts far behind. They believed in the freedom to worship with their hearts and their souls and their minds. And our heritage lies undone. May we always remember their faith. For they thrust into our generation by their footsteps across the way. And to bury their loved ones by the wayside, unmarked graves which they filled with tearful prayers. And they say, "Here we die before it's over. Take us home to the gods who and darkness shines like a beacon. May we always remember their faith. For they cast into our generation by their footsteps across the way. Send the land unwanted in the desert. Made it blossom so lovely as a rose. Without a temple so grand and majestic, that upon us of mercy shows. And our heritage shines like a beacon. May we always remember their faith. For they cast into our generation by their footsteps across the way.
Hello. It's my privilege to introduce some great people. They're all great, but a few we're going to spotlight today, and they know about it. So I think what we're going to do is have them all come up at once, and then when I talk about it, for just a second, I want them to come raise their hand. And we'll do the applause at the end, if that's okay. So you guys know who you are coming up. I need to have. I'm not sure if Claire's here, Mary Shinway, Marilyn Cox, Janice Johnson, Terry Stapley, Josephine Lewis. See you guys. So we'll do this.
Okay, these people are just phenomenal. I said everybody is, we're gonna just go through a few. I want to, talk about just a second about some of the people that are gonna retire. Carlson, she's been our former, fourth vice president and photo chair. She's not here today. Mary Schleyer is the fan. She's our former, fifth vice. And she's a document specialist, and continues on forums and volunteers a ton at home, a ton. And so anytime you see a wonderful form on our website, think of her. She's doing that, so thank you so much for all that. Marilyn Cox, our former chaplain. And are you still gonna be a docent, Marilyn? You still gonna be a docent? So she's a docent as well. She's glad that way we get to see her a little bit more, so that would be great. Thank you for all your service. Janice Johnson, raise your hand. She's our former membership department assistant. She just, some of these people I don't get to see a lot because I come in different days, but when I get to see some of them, it's just really the free. I know it's a lot of run, busy. So thanks for all your service. Let's just give you your little treats real quick. This is Mary. And this is Janice. Tara. Okay. All right, so these are people that are retiring from our museum, even though they're going to be docent possibly and work from home. Our volunteer awards, Terry Stapley, your parent, Terry. She has indexed the entire Using Memories series and she's continuing. I understand you like a machine. And I think she's put in like, let's see, 9,999 hours to come home, and she's amazing, so thank you so much for that. It's good. Then we have Joe Springman, where you go. Those people, I think, so Joe started off as a docent, and the thing I remember, and he probably doesn't remember this, but we had a Christmas party, he won a door prize, which was, the string of lights, you get water. That come like this, and, you did up, and he won that, he was just thrilled with it, in fact, he worked at the museum. He worked at the cemetery. He's a fun guy. He works, are you in the resource closet? He's over there, he's just checking everything to make sure there's not duplicates, and he's amazing. I keep hearing wonderful things about him too, of course, so thank you so much for doing all that. And then the rest of the thing. This guy comes in with his wife Constance every Wednesday and every Friday from 9 a.m. until 4:30, every single week. And so we just it's really fun to walk in and see him. Fun there. But anyway, thank you so much. Let's give him a round of applause. You're excused for all the voice. Thank you. Oh, and then, I gotta know, this was actually for everyone, but I'll read it. A daughter has lost a covered wagon pin today somewhere, just came off her little van, probably think. So if you find it, please let one of us know, or the cashier, out there, so we'd like to find that. So if you, I don't have anything with me, but if you, find it or have it, would you just turn it, thanks.
We're having music burial by Ryan and Emily Miller, Troops of the Faith, and come now down to their resistance.
Of the enemy, I say, shall we shrink or shout? While we know the heart of God is seeking on. Shall the children of our promise come to rest here? True to the faith their parents have cherished, true to the truth for which martyrs have perished, true God's command, so far faithful and true, we will never see. Worth of our salvation, we believe unto the truth. We will watch and pray and pray with the fervency of you. We will strive to be our goal of the kingdom of our Lord. The faithful ones redeemed, you have loved and kept His word. True to that our parents have cherished, true to the truth for which martyrs have perished, to God's command, so far faithful and true, we will never stand. True to the faith that our parents have cherished, true to the truth for which martyrs have perished, to God's command, so much faithful, we will never cease. Streams of mercy never cease. All for spontaneous in Jesus' glorious song that they is the birth of so now the mighty and the simply true love. Jesus, how we remember wandering from he dreams me from in your oceans precious. Celebrate the daily hours. By my wandering, watching, go to honor, Lord, I need. Go to lead the God, is my love, take and see the morning, those is my love, take and see the I am pleased to be introducing our speaker for today, Scott Christensen. Scott works as a historian and an archivist for the Church History Department. He was born in Logan and chose Utah State as the place for him to earn his master's degrees in history. And he also minored in sociology while he was there. He is married to Megan, and they are the parents of two boys, Jacob and Tate. His love for history extends to his home life. In 1991, he purchased a pioneer home. The first portion of the home was built of adobe in 1861. Later, a brick addition was added in 1868. An old railroad house was attached to the house in 1879, and further additions occurred in 1890s. All were in need of restoration when Scott purchased the home. In addition to his home, he bought a 1933 gas station located on Highway 91 in Downey, Idaho, and he and his family are also restoring his. I happen to know they carry 15 cars on their automobile insurance. And all but 3 of these cars are in various stages of restoration, so he does not lack for a project. Scott is the author of Savage Shoshone Chieftain, Mormon Elder, 1822 through 1887. He is pleased that the DUP camp in Paradise, Utah is the Savage camp. Please join with me in welcoming Scott as our speaker today.
Good morning, everyone. So wonderful to be with you this morning. I feel grateful to President Jepson and to the Board of the International Society for the invitation. It's a great honor to be in this setting and to be with all of you. A little bit intimidating because you are all historians, so I can't fake anything today. You can check up on my sources. I would have been offended by this mass exodus happening in Saturday, except that President Jepson did mention that they wanted to be in the audience because they knew I could show them some slides that accompany some of the stories that I'd like to share today, detailing experiences that I've had in my 36 years at the church history department. Events that sometimes felt significant at the time, and in other cases, their significance only seemed to emerge over a period of time when certain things seem to have greater significance. All right, I'd like to first talk about primary roll books, which is a strange way to start an address. But it goes back to 1989, June of 1989, I was a new employee, and we were trying to get control over all of the collections that were on the shelves on the 4th floor. Part of the 4th floor was kind of no man's land. It was stuff that had just been shoved in boxes and put on shelves for someday. You might have some of those boxes in your basements. Why was that my assignment over a period of 2 months to go through every box? Because I had no seniority. And because I was young enough, I could grab a box from the top and plop down on the floor and go through it, right register to the pop back and do it again and again and again. So I ran across a number of different kinds of records. Some more interesting than others, some were really remarkable. But what I found in almost every box were at least a few primary roll books. And as a historian, I recognize that any record that lists people in association with a place have value. But I found myself wondering, probably because it was my role to deal with hundreds of these, does it really matter that little Susie and little Thomas, which weeks they attended primary in 1957? Will they even care, or their kids care that they were regular attenders? I wasn't so sure about that, but I did my job, and I got all of those inventoried so that they could be cataloged and be made available to the public. Why am I showing you this photograph? Having just shared my experience with primary roll books, I promise you that the two stories come together. So between 1945 and 1963, the United States government developed nuclear weapons and conducted more than 1,000 tests of those devices. Most of those tests were above ground or atmospheric detonations, conducted on lands controlled by the government's Nevada test site. While the weapons were deployed in Nevada, the radioactive fallout could not be restrained. Enormous plumes of dust containing radioactive particles regularly drifted some distance before finally settling on the ground. The fallout was especially heavy in Nevada communities and in south and central Utah, in northern New Mexico, and in parts of Arizona. All of these were areas with substantial bioracing populations. The harmful nature of this fallout was initially misunderstood. And even after science began to connect the dots between the prevalence of radioactive particles and certain cancers, that connection was officially disputed. Finally, in 1990, Senator Orrin Hatch and others in Congress were able to get legislation passed that officially acknowledged the federal government's responsibility for the fallout and authorized financial payments to people who had developed illnesses linked to that radiation or to their families if they had already died of those cancers. In 1990, the Church History Department called on Michelle Norland and Sharon Walker, who spent more than a decade as down-under program researchers. So their role, when people had applied who felt that they qualified for remuneration for this injury, was to prove that they actually weren't in harm's way when those tests were happening and when radiation exposure was the greatest. But how do you prove that you were living in Bunkerville, Nevada in September of 1954, or in Flagstaff, Arizona in November of 1963? How do you do that? What records do you go to? Phone books wouldn't be precise enough, assuming that the people you want to document had phones, and that the phone books had survived. School records, somewhat valuable, but that doesn't prove that someone is there specifically during months of the year. Other kinds of records have some value, but could have been questioned by the government auditors. So what records did the Walkers and those who worked with them use? Primary logos. Finally, those records were vindicated in my opinion. It was amazing how much detail these had. You could track children, even of migrant or farm families that traveled through the area available. If they were involved at all in primary during the time they were in the community, their names were registered. And we could note the weeks that they were there, but not just the children, but also the primary residencies and the teachers that were called to that task. So I can say without any fear of exaggeration that tens of millions, I'd say many tens of millions of dollars were finally awarded to these victims and to their families. Why? Because we have been a record-keeping people, and those records have survived. I love this photo because you can tell it's downtown Las Vegas. That is not a cumulonimbus pile in the background. That is an atomic clone. So you get a sense that the connection wasn't really understood initially. And how interesting that the people who faithfully kept those little primary roll books and rosters were just doing what they've been told, having no idea that 40, 50, 60 years later, those records would have such relevance for an entirely different purpose than they could have ever anticipated. All right, now I'd like to tell you about my experience meeting a wonderful Korean man named Kim Ki-yong. It was 2005. I was in South Korea to interview the pioneering generation of Latter-day Saints on the 50th anniversary of the founding of the church there. A distinguished older man came up to me at one of the events and began to visit me by saying that as a young man, he had worn the uniforms of 4 nations. And was I interested in hearing his story? Like, yes, of course I am. So Kim Il was born in an area known as Korea in 1925. During that time, Korea was occupied by Japan. As he came of age, he was forced to join the Japanese army and to fight for them in World War II. So this represents the style of uniform that he first wore. During a battle, he was captured by the Russian army and was sent to a prison camp in Siberia, where he somehow managed to survive for the next 4 years. It was incredibly hard for Korean and Japanese prisoners who were forced to endure near starvation and exposure to the elements. But he listened carefully to the language that was spoken by his captors and soon began to understand and finally to speak really good Russian. He recalled in the interview I did with him, quote, the Soviets started to take an interest in me as my language skills improved. They asked me many questions, like how did I end up in the Japanese army? How much schooling had I received? Was I married? And with that exception, they would always ask me if I believed in Jesus Christ. End quote. Well, he's been raised as a Presbyterian, so he can truly say he believed in Jesus Christ. Kim was assigned to work in a factory that processed fish for the Russian army. Because he was a Christian and would often speak of his faith, he had something in common with the old Russian Orthodox women who were also working in the factory. They finally began to sneak him little gifts of bread crusts and salted fish, which helped him to survive that difficult incarceration. And finally, at the end of World War II, he was allowed to return to Korea, which had just been liberated from Japan. The new governments were in place, including the brand new North Korea government. He served there only briefly before escaping home on a small fishing boat to South Korea, where he was immediately captured and then drafted into the South Korean army. Because of his language capabilities in Russian and Japanese, he was soon transferred to a position in the United States Army. So uniform number 4, where he served until the end of the Korean conflict. Kim said that he valued his Christian faith and prayed daily, reading the Bible as often as he had access to it. He immediately recognized truths when he met missionaries in 1970 and was baptized. The Iron Curtain fell with the formal and final collapse of the Soviet Union in December 1991, and the Russian mainland was opened to new religions, including the LDS faith, soon thereafter. Brother Kim and his wife, Kun Jae, became the first missionaries to serve in the Russian Far East. He had the language, he understood the culture, and he was very effective in his work. How interesting that the land of Siberia that had been so forbidding as his prison during World War II was now his field of missionary labor. He had been carefully prepared for this mission 45 years before the call came. He just didn't know it at the time. I'd like to talk for a few minutes about an experience that is concerning the Oklahoma Nation in Arizona. So I was working at my desk in the church history department, and I got a call from a colleague, Mike Landon, who was on a 3-week collection trip through the southwestern states. And he called me and he said, Scott, we've got a problem. I don't know who to talk to. Maybe you know somebody I can talk with about this. He had been visiting with a Caucasian lady in Mesa, from whom he was collecting some records. She also worked part-time in Mesa Temple. And she said, there is a problem here, and they've taken me into their confidence, And so I probably shouldn't share it, but I feel like I've got to. She said that every week, some of the elderly members of the Papago or Tohono Nation people would come for their temple shifts. And they were just absolutely faithful in that work. Part of a word that had existed since the 1880s. So very early Native American converts. And she noticed that as they came each week, the very first thing they did was to stop at the little desk where you could write down the names of people that were sick and afflicted, knowing that those names would be prayed for. Those people would be prayed for if the names had been written in the slip. And she noticed that they were very careful to spend the time in writing so many names. And she glimpsed a little bit and thought, well, those are just one name. It's not like the first and last time it's going on. And they finally confessed that they had a problem, and this was the only way that they thought they could resolve it. You see, they had a wonderful LDS meeting house on the reservation, but it was a smaller meeting house. And LDS church leaders had gone to the leadership of this board and had said, you deserve to have this building enhanced, to make it larger and to do proper landscaping and to get rid of this dirt parking lot. We can do concrete curb and gutter and pavement. And we'll just wipe this area around the building clean, and we'll do all of these enhancements. Well, they listened to those plans carefully and didn't seem excited about them, but they know that would be okay. What the architects that were not of their culture and who were there to present this could not possibly have understood is that this group respected the church so highly, and it was not part of their culture to openly protest people that they respected. So they didn't feel that they could push against this. And yet the plans call for the destruction of the majority of the mesquite trees. These are examples I just pulled off internet searches showing what a mesquite tree is. And they're gnarly, they're desert survivors, they grow for hundreds of years. And these good people told the lady at the temple that their ancestors had known these trees. Every generation came to know them, and each tree had long had a name. And they were so worried that these trees would be destroyed, which were family to them. But so uncertain of what they could possibly do, that all they could think to do was to put each tree's name on the curb wall each week. That's why they were taking so much time. This is a great photo I found. We had a collection of those very talented workers in 1988. So he tells me the story. I call Boyd Wright from physical facilities and I explain the situation again. He says, hold a minute. And I hear click, 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 and pretty soon the architect in Mesa is on the phone with us. And he said, tell him. So I summarized the story to him. And there was a silence for a minute. And then he said, well, why didn't they just tell me we could go around those trees? Well, this bit of a fuzzy photo off the drive-by Google Maps, but you get a sense of the number of trees around that meeting house. So the majority of the trees were saved, and how interesting that these people who couldn't think of any way that these precious living things could survive, nevertheless found a way. Now I'd like to talk about a dear person named Joyce Sullivan. She began serving as the church service missionary in the church history department in 2009. Although her mission assignment only required 16 hours of commitment per week, she typically put in 40 or more hours each week. She was extraordinarily kind and loving, the kind of person that you could make her whole day better by simply hearing her passing reading into each after the following. I'd become aware in the summer of 2012 that Sister Foreman would soon be turning 80 back sometime in September. And I wanted to do something extra special to honor her for her years of dedicated service. I managed to find out in a few conversations that her birthday is September 18th and that she had been born in Nevada. I've become aware of that, and so Panaca was a place I'd never thought of much, though. Turns out it was established as a Mormon colony in 1864 and is actually Southern Nevada's first permanent settlement. I was pleased to discover that we had a number of Panaca Ward record books in the church's library collection, and I soon had the 1932 volume in hand. The detailed entries in the volume were written in ink in a beautiful cursive style. I didn't find anything about Sister Foreman on the date of her birth, but did find an entry in November 1932 summarizing that Foreman and her twin sister had been brought to church and had been given a name and a blessing, and that Sister Foreman was blessed first. So Sister Foreman's birthday fell on a Tuesday, and sure enough, she showed up for a full day of service on her 80th birthday. Why she didn't take that day off, I don't know. But I felt it would be a wonderful opportunity to have an unveiling of this old leather bound volume to read that intro I had found. So I'm in the meeting with her. I reveal it. She was shocked and thrilled. She said, I just have never thought of looking myself up in old records. Doing it for everyone else. So she asked if she could take the volume to her desk and look through it some more, and I was happy to agree to that. I saw her right after lunch that same day, and as I greeted her and she returned her a typical happy greeting and smile, I could hear some emotion in her voice. And I asked her if she had really enjoyed looking at that book. And she said, oh, yes. And I reread and I photographed with my phone that entry that you had highlighted. And then she said, then I went back to the months before we were born. I said, oh, that's great. I didn't have time to do that. I didn't think to do it. I'm glad we did it. And she said, I found an entry for Fast Day in July of 1932. And she said, my mother and my dad attended services that day. So can you imagine at that point, her mother, Dora, is 7 months pregnant with these twins, and those rutted roads, unimproved, early automobiles that didn't have a smooth ride, no air conditioning anywhere, including in the meeting house. So the fact that she had even shown up at church was, I think, probably the whole that anyone would in those conditions, but especially 7 months pregnant. And she said, my mother came forward and grasped the pulpit, and she shared a testimony of the power of prayer and of the gospel. I said, oh, that's great. I'm glad you did it. She said, Scott, you can't know how important this is to me. She said, my mother died 2 months after we were born. I never knew my mother. And then she said that today is a gift to me for my 80th birthday. She has just shared her testimony with me for the first time. So, there are many records we can create or can save that can be a voice that will speak from the dust. All of you are in this very business of saving records that will inform succeeding generations of how those proud pioneers that we honor really felt about any number of things. I think we should never underestimate the potential power of those records. So this is Sister Foreman, just last year. Her mother had actually had received a degree from University of Utah. When she was a young lady, she was the first person in that Nevada county to graduate from college. And she said, you know, I've had cancer for years. I'm not going to last much longer. I'm going to see her soon. And I'd like to have a degree too. So she went back to college and just a few years ago received a bachelor's degree. Pretty amazing. We lost her just last month, so I'm sad to have to go, but grateful for the blessing of her and for the lesson that I think she taught me of the power and importance of leaving a record. So we have a lot of senior missionaries who work with us, really a couple hundred in rotation, most of them part-time. And one time, probably 20 years ago, one of them came up to me and said, my best friend, her son was kidnapped when he was a missionary. And he wrote it down. He was asked by President Faust the day after his release if he would write down what happened. I can get that. Do you want it? It's like, yeah, I don't think we have a lot of kidnapping narratives. We'll take it. And so it was soon mailed to us, and I read it so that I could catalog it. I was just kind of overwhelmed because this was a record created almost immediately after the events transpired. It was a companionship of the Argentina Rosario Mission, Thane Morrison and Peter Allen Shaw. And they had this kind of dream contact where someone came in and said, I heard about a church and I'll assemble my whole family so you can come teach us, you know, beware that can be true about it. But the missionaries went to the spot outside of town on the appropriate day, and it was just so that they could be kidnapped by a Paraguayan left-wing guerrilla group called the Military Political Organization. They were hoping to overthrow the government of Paraguay, and they needed money. And so they thought, we'll kidnap a couple of these rich Americans and see what happens. So 1.5 million was the demanded ransom. This was June 26th, 1976. So, of course, no organization would do well to cooperate with this kind of thing because you endanger everyone else. And so the LDS church leaders knew that they couldn't pay this ransom. But they didn't know what to do. They immediately contacted the families and flew them to Salt Lake and contacted people at the highest level of the State Department and the Paraguayan and Argentinian authorities, and just a lot of praying. So meanwhile, these missionaries, they're kidnapped, they're hooded and tied up and marched out the dead of night to the Corona River, which is named for a reason. They're loaded onto that and they're going across and it's stormy and the boat is leaking and the boat sinks. But by then the elders have gotten hands free, so they valiantly swim to the shore, sadly the same shore that their captors made it to, so they were quickly recaptured. And they were marched into the jungle, where they were first put in a hole, buried in a hole that had been dug in the jungle floor, and then were marched several miles to a cabin in the middle of the forest, and were treated fairly brutally. But after several days, and this is Thane Larson's account, says after several days, there was a new guard, and here starts the story of Abel Alfonso. He who the Lord used to say, my companion and I, as I'll write this, my love and appreciation goes out to Abel. Now more than then, realizing all that he did for me. He's about 20 years old, tall and lanky with brown hair, fairly long, plain looking, but with a look of kindness, his face reading lightly, not like those who are spiritually dead, which have no life in them. He was a man. So basically, he sits down and tells them, it's just my cousin, and they asked me to do this. I didn't know what it was. I don't agree with it. And so they said, well, if you're willing, well, when your shift is up, could you please go to the authorities and let them know, no one else will know. And they're letting us see their faces now, so they're probably not expecting us to survive this. And he promised he would. So the shift ended, he went. Towards the end of the next day, the rescue, I'll put in quotes, affected by the Paraguayan police happened. And this is specifically and exactly what Thamerson wrote about that. One with the poncho and helmet and the rifle came to the left side of this, on that side of the bed, and put his gun to my nose, telling me he would, if I said a word, they would shoot me. He had a face ready to kill me or back to my face now. I'll never forget that look on his face. At that time, I heard the discharge of the rifle. I turned my head and saw a looking man recocking his bolt action rifle. I thought they'd shot and show me that they meant business and to get all the shot moving. But by that time, the one on the left started tying my wrists together. And by the way, as he did that, he stole the watch off my wrist. Then I looked to my right, where Shaw was doubled over, his face at his knees with a hole in his back and then a hole in his coat. And he seemed lifeless with that movement. He's dead, I thought. The whole mess seemed like a dream or a nightmare. The policeman didn't even squirm or show any feelings to what had happened to my companion. But then I saw he was breathing, so I knew he was alive. I thought at first the bus had just picked him. But then I realized that it had gone through him. The police had actually shot him. It didn't register. I had to ask the one on my left if they were actually the police. Well, they tied his hands behind his back. I couldn't believe it. And they ordered him to walk. He came to me now for 1 or 2 minutes, asking me if he was shot. I answered with the affirmative with a gentle, yes, you are. They had a gun in my head and told me if I said anything, they would shoot me, so I couldn't say much more. We were ordered to walk, and I was barefooted, and I saw my companion get off the bed and walk, asking for help that was impossible to give, and no one gave it to him. They marched us out. It seemed like they didn't care. He walked, complaining about the pain and asking for help. He had been losing blood terribly. In fact, I could see that it was running down his left leg all the way to his toes. I walked as close as I could to him, telling him he's going to make it. I thought retreating is worse than the Bibles. Well, they finally gave in after a while, and they untied my hands and also his so I could help him walk. He almost fainted. Every time we stopped, I grabbed him under his right shoulder, he was shot under his left, and helped him walk over rough trails that seemed to him on his lawn. I believe we walked a good 2 to 3 miles. Our Shaw was complaining about the pain and how he couldn't go on anymore for the loss of blood. I tried to comfort him, saying he could make it, he had to make it, and that he wasn't losing too much blood, he was praying for a while. The police and their comfort was, don't cry so much, it's a little. He was walking, and it was unreal, his pain was so great. We got to one point where he couldn't go on because he lost so much blood and was so weak, and he was getting dizzy and staggering. He felt like full life was leaving him. While walking, he laid his head on my shoulder, and I quietly said in English, Elder Parker, Elder Peter Allen Shaw, by the power of the Melchizedek priesthood, which I hold, I command you to have consciousness and to be able to walk, ordering and promising strength to get to the truck and the doctor. It worked. I'll never forget how his step picked up. It seemed like life came up through the soles of his feet. He suffered, but he straightened up and kept walking and walking without as much difficulty. The Lord had worked a miracle. I'll never forget the moment when we got in the pickup truck. They didn't even let the tailgate down. He had to climb over it and get in the back of the alone. They wouldn't let me help him. He flew over as if someone had given him a push. We sat down together in the back of the truck and I started thanking Lord for helping him to walk so far and remember hoping he would pass out really pretty brutal. Happy stories. They both survived. We completely recovered from those injuries. And Abel Alfonso, one of the church history specialists, tracked him down 15 years ago. And he had had no contact with the church in all those years. He hadn't been prosecuted with the others, but he said he had a really tough time because they knew he he's the one that had narrowed them out and had some really brutal treatment from people in his own community. They taught him the gospel when he was baptized. So, all told, happy ending from a gruesome set of circumstances. So we look in the newspaper for that, and there were a few articles. Two LDS Christians rescued from riddles. It gives you a few of these pertinent facts, but it doesn't give you any of the texture that you just heard in the story I shared. And that's, again, why it's so important, the work that all of you do in capturing as realistic and accurate an account, as detailed as possible, so that the richness of the stories of those who have lived, and in some cases, so the greatly sacrifice, can be remembered by succeeding generations. Now I'd like to talk about my experience with a daguerreotype of the Nauvoo Temple. It was June 1997, and me and some of my colleagues were in Cedar City for an archival convention. It was archivists from various organizations meeting together for a few days of classes. And the opening reception was at the Iron Mission Museum State Park. I've been there before. It was a very nice museum. This time it seems a little jumped up. There were the usual exhibits, and then there were all sorts of kind of stuff just stacked against the walls. And we were given our little cup of Sprite and invited to walk around and look at the exhibits. I thought, since who would give you a sticky drink while you look at the collections? I'm sure that wouldn't happen now. So I'm looking around and thinking, wow, this museum's really got it high. This isn't a well-organized museum I used to know. And I look on one wall, and there were a couple of things that had just kind of, hung without any particular purpose. There was probably just a nail there and it's stuck on. One was one of those novelty photograph postcards from the 1950s, 60s, and it showed a cowboy putting a saddle on a giant jackalope. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
And it was, to make it even worse, it was in a frilly white plastic frame that his soul was kind of yellow. And I thought that doesn't really belong in any museum. And then right next to that was this gorgeous, glorious frame. And I could tell from my background in material culture that it was old. I thought that's probably 1850s. How interesting, especially interesting, because the mirror in the center was so small. And I thought, when money is dear, who would have spent a lot of money to do a lovely frame around a mirror that's so small that you really couldn't see your entire face in it? It's almost not usable. And besides that fact, it was so oxidized that you couldn't even use it as a mirror. So I'm standing wondering the jackalope and this other thing. And then the light goes on. And I think, whoa, it could be a daguerreotype. So Philip Daguerre in France invented photography in 1839, and so it was named after him, daguerreotype. And he figured that if he could take a sheet of copper and shine it so it's absolutely mirror clean, silver plated, so basically created a mirror, and then in a dark room paint light sensitive emulsion on the surface, he could expose that to what he wanted to capture, and then take it back into a dark room and fix those chemicals with another chemical, and you had an image. It was in reverse, but it showed you exactly what your camera had been pointed at. And so it goes crazy. Just it's a technology that is so in demand that by 1840 there are photographers in Boston and other big cities on the Eastern Seaboard, and they were starting to move west into regional players. I thought, if this is a daguerreotype photograph of someone, it must be somebody really important to put this expensive frame around it. So I get up close and I'm looking at it, and I kind of gasp because I think I see the tower of the Nauvoo Temple. I thought, how could it possibly be that this exists? I mean, it hasn't been discovered. But the reflection of it was tough, so I finally put my face flat against the wall so I could look over. So the reflection wasn't all, and I was sure it was nothing to. So I started dragging colleagues over, including Paul Music, who's here today. And each was confirming to me that what I thought I was doing was right. So then we go and talk to the director of the museum. And said, what about this? And I said, oh, I don't know anything about that stuff. The DEP is doing a full reworking of their museum. And they had asked if they could just store their stuff here because they knew it would be safe. That's why it was junky. It was just all this stuff that wasn't part of the permanent collection. It was just there temporarily. So it turned out it was the Cedar City DEP. So it's June of '97 when we discovered this, and by December of 1997, we'd gone through a process with the pioneers to borrow that and to bring it back to Salt Lake. So we very carefully pulled the square nails out of the back, and there was padding, so that the daguerreotype got pushed against the front of the frame. And what was the padding? Well, it was an advertisement. Let's see, here's the photograph. This is under studio lighting, the best we could possibly get once we had it removed. And it's appealing. You can tell there's something good there, but you can't really see it, right? So this is what was being used for packing behind it. It was an advertisement for Louis Chaffin's Daguerrean Gallery in Kingsville, which of course was the Mormon town for outfitting the saints, getting their teams and horses and gear put together prior to crossing the plains. So then I thought, okay, it's a Chaffin. Had to do some research on him. He was from La Harpe, Illinois, which isn't too far from Nauvoo, and had become part of the harvest of the converts in the region after Nauvoo was established, and certainly would have traveled to Nauvoo to do some of this daguerreotype type images. And then as that community was vacated, he stayed on in the Southern Mormon community to try to raise enough money so that he could eventually immigrate to Utah. I love this broadside, which means it's printed on one side and it would have been glued to trees or whatever. And it says, immigrants and others desirous of procuring likenesses to forward with their friends previous to crossing the plains would do well to follow. Translated, you might die. Send a nice picture to your family. So now we knew who took it. Well, where did Louis Chaffin end up? He ended up in Cedar City, and his granddaughter, decades later, had given this to the DP. It was by then that she knew it was the Nauvoo temple, but it was so oxidized that it was kind of hidden in plain sight. They knew they had it, but it was usually not able to be enjoyed because of that problem. But because the DP had a relic problem, it had been saved. So we get it and we start researching. We find that the world's expert on daguerreotype painting is in St. Louis. And we again go through the process of working with the DEP. They give us permission to take it. So my colleague Elise flies out with this precious cargo. And he described it as the guy had an insulated dish so it couldn't conduct electricity. And he put distilled water in it. And it had two copper skids on the bottom that were hooked to wires to exit the dish. And put the daguerreotype in there, which is again metal, floated down until it made contact. And then he had something that he described as almost like a fat fountain pen with an insulated covering we could touch, but a little tip that was exposed. And it was hooked to a different voltage. And all he had to do was hover this pen in the water above the daguerreotype, not ever touching the daguerreotype. and that silver oxidation just floated to the surface. It was almost like magic. So what did we end up with? The highest quality, best daguerreotype of the Nova Temple in existence. And this is the fun one. As you're looking at the green version, it looks like you're seeing several layers. The daguerreotype is obviously in the middle, and the only way to make a copy of a daguerreotype is to take a photograph of the daguerreotype. There were no photograph negatives. And so you can tell on this one, there's two little square nails here at the bottom. Can you see those? At the bottom of the screen. So Chaffin would have put those little nails on a board, rested the daguerreotype on it, and photographed it probably several times because people would have wanted to have copies of that. And you see around the edges, it's shiny silver still. That's because that is part of the silver plated copper plate that he didn't paint the license of the emulsion. So you are seeing the full kind of process of making the daguerreotype in this image. The other positive about this being the daguerreotype of the daguerreotype is that corrected the reverse. So the first daguerreotype would have been reversed. This is a copy of that. And then we see it, from the right angle as the building itself. So we get this back from cleaning, we're just astounded, we share our happiness with the daughters of Cedar City, and we send it again to Panorama Productions, which took high quality photographs for us, pre-digital. It's hard to remember now, it's the world before digital. You had to wait a few weeks to get images processed until they came back. It was my privilege to catalog those. So it wasn't until the beginning of 1999 that we had these images of the Queen daguerreotype cataloged and available for use. Just a few months later, April 12th, 1999, President Lee announced that the Nava Temple would be rebuilt on its original site, and he had instructed the architects to make the exterior as exactly like the original as documentation would allow. And so the next Monday, the conference was swarmed by these architects who've known about this probably for months, but they've kept it secret. So this image that I thought would just be a great illustration in family histories of people who had ancestors in Lebanon became something so much more. It became a construction document that we had to find a year and a half earlier for it to be ready for that purpose. We have a nice set of original drawings, but there were changes between the drawings and what was actually built. So all of these experiences come together just to remind me of the importance of what everyone in the show does, that history matters, and that to have clear and accurate and honest records really does matter. We can anticipate some of the uses for the records that we safeguard and for the stories that you capture yourself. But I think we'll be surprised at some of the uses, the histories that we gather and the artifacts, the relics we have saved. We'll be surprised someday of the many uses that will be asked of them. As I was shared at the beginning of the story with the primary books. So it's been a great adventure for the last 36 years, and I look forward to more adventures as I continue my employment and my living and my associating with wonderful people like all of you. Thank you.
So that amazing. It makes me proud to be part of this, what we do to preserve history and the daguerreotype. Where is it? It's in our museum. And so you'll hear it because it's in a very safe place, all climate controlled and taken great care of. But thanks to you for finding it, for all the things that have happened since. What an inspirational talk, I will never forget. Thank you so much. We worked 20 more years, we'll have you back again to tell us more of this stuff. Thank you to everyone. What a great convention, what a great year, what a great group of women. What an honor it is to be with you today together with all of these experiences that have truly enhanced our lives for the better. Do good, be careful, be safe, take care of your companies and camps, and we'll see you again next year. Thank you all so much.
The caller.
Thank you for doing that.
Oh, sure. I brought my knee pads if I'd known. Yeah, sorry. And the 19. Does this come off? Yeah. I can here, you can just go. Just. So, thank you very much.